What would you do if the spaceship you just bought came with an unexpected passenger? An alien woman who held the key to galactic secrets. One reckless bid at a salvage auction is about to plunge this ordinary man into a battle for survival, a forbidden connection, and a conspiracy that could bring down the most powerful force in the galaxy. I still remember the exact moment my life changed forever. The auction house on Karanis Prime was packed that day. Sweaty bodies, the stink of cheap synth alcohol, and desperation hanging in the air like a fog. Everyone there was looking for the same thing, a bargain that might turn their miserable lives around. Me, I was just another loser, with a dream too big for my wallet. Lot 347, a VKA-class vessel, previous military grade stripped of armaments. Sold as is, no returns, no warranties. The auctioneer's voice was bored, mechanical. Another day, another pile of space junk to offload to fools like me. But something about that ship caught my eye. Even beneath the grime and rust, I could see lines that didn't match any standard VKA cruiser I'd ever seen. This thing had been modified extensively. Opening bid at 50,000 credits. The room stayed silent. No one was touching this thing. Military surplus meant paperwork. Paperwork meant questions. Questions meant trouble. I should have known better. I should have walked away. 40,000, anyone 30,000 then. My hand went up before my brain could stop it. Pure instinct, pure stupidity. 30,000 to the gentleman in the back. Do I hear 35? Nothing, just the hum of the ventilation system and the soft murmur of side conversations. Going once, going twice. The slam of the gavel echoed through the hall. Sold to bidder number 629. And just like that, I owned a starship. What I didn't know was that I'd also bought myself a one-way ticket to the top of every most wanted list in 3 sectors. All because of what, or rather who, was waiting inside. My name is Gabriel Reyes. I used to be a nobody, a salvage rat trying to scrape together enough credits to eat. Now I'm a fugitive with the most dangerous woman in the galaxy as my co-pilot. And somehow that's not even the craziest part of my story. I approached the docking bay where my new purchase waited, authorization ship in hand, heart pounding with a mix of excitement and dread. The dock manager, a grizzled Tauran, with skin like leather and eyes that had seen too much, barely glanced at my credentials. Bay 17, don't expect much. That thing's been sitting here for months. Previous owner disappeared under unusual circumstances. I should have asked questions. I should have turned around. But hindsight is always perfect, isn't it? Thanks, I muttered, already walking away. Hey, human, the Tauran called after me. Whatever you do, don't mess with the auxiliary systems. Trust me on this one. I nodded, not understanding the warning and definitely not taking it seriously enough. Bay 17 was at the far end of the station where the lighting was dimmer and the security cameras conveniently malfunctioned more often than not. Perfect place to hide something you don't want found. As I rounded the corner, I finally saw her. My ship, my mistake, my destiny. She was beautiful in the way only machines built for violence can be. Sleek despite the carbon scoring along her hull. Powerful despite the apparent disrepair. This was no stripped military vessel. This was a predator disguised as prey. The access hatch opened with a reluctant hiss when I pressed my new authorization chip against the reader. The air that escaped smelled stale, metallic. I stepped inside and the lights flickered on, automatically revealing a surprisingly well-maintained interior. "Hello," I called out, not expecting an answer. I made my way to the bridge, trailing my fingers along the smooth metal walls. Everything looked functional, better than the exterior had suggested. Why had no one bid against me? What was I missing? The captain's chair swiveled as I approached, revealing nothing, just an empty seat. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding and sat down. The console lit up under my touch, displays flickering to life one by one. That's when I saw it. Not on any screen, but reflected in the polished surface of the dead navigation panel movement behind me. I spun around just in time to feel cold metal press against my throat. "Don't move," said a voice that couldn't possibly be human. Too melodic, too perfect. One wrong breath, and I separate your head from your shoulders. That's how I met Zyra. Not the most romantic first encounter, but then again, nothing about our story was ever going to be conventional. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, despite the blade at my throat. "How did you get on my ship?" A laugh, soft and dangerous. "Your ship, that's an interesting perspective." The pressure on my throat eased slightly. "Turn around, slowly." I did as I was told and found myself face to face with the most striking being I'd ever seen. Humanoid but unmistakably alien. Skin the color of twilight with faint luminescent patterns that seemed to shift and pulse. Eyes like liquid silver, pupilless and all-seeing. Hair, if you could call it that, floating around her head as if suspended in water despite the normal gravity. She was dressed in what appeared to be battle armor, form-fitting and scarred from use. The knife at my throat gleamed with an unnatural blue light. "This is my ship," she said, each word precise and carefully formed as if human speech was still new to her. "You are an unexpected complication." "I just bought this vessel at auction," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Legal transfer of ownership. I have the documentation." Her head tilted slightly, those unsettling silver eyes studying me as if I were a particularly interesting specimen under a microscope. "Interesting," she finally said. "It seems we have a problem, human, because I cannot allow you to take this ship, and you apparently believe you own it." I should have been terrified. I should have been begging for my life. Instead, I found myself strangely calm, almost fascinated. "We could share it," I heard myself say. Where that came from, I'll never know. Maybe it was her pheromones already affecting my judgment. Maybe it was just the concussion I was about to receive. Her perfect eyebrows rose slightly. The knife didn't waver. Share with a human. The concept seemed to genuinely baffle her. "You have no idea what you've stumbled into, do you?" Before I could answer, alarms blared throughout the ship. Emergency lights bathed the bridge in crimson. Her eyes narrowed, and in one fluid motion, she withdrew the knife and moved to the console. "Proximity alert," she muttered, fingers dancing across the controls. "Zyra'Kahl signatures, 3 vessels heavily armed." Zyra'Kahl as in Zyra'Kahl Guild, the bounty hunters. My voice cracked embarrassingly. She turned those unnerving eyes back to me. "Yes, and they're not here for you, human. They're here for me, and now by extension for this ship, your ship." The main screen flickered to life, showing 3 predatory-looking craft approaching our docking bay. "We have exactly 3 minutes before they breach this vessel," she said matter-of-factly. "So you have a choice to make. Run away now, pretend you never saw me, never touched this ship. Maybe they'll believe you. Maybe they won't." "Or," I asked already, knowing I wasn't going to hit the alternative. Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Or you stay. We fight. We fly. We survive together." I should have run. Any sane person would have. "I'm Gabriel," I said, instead extending my hand. "And I think I'm going to need to know how to fly this thing." She didn't take my hand, but she did nod, the ghost of respect flickering across her alien features. "I am Zyra'Kahl of the Black Star Legion. And human Gabriel, if you stay, your old life ends. You understand this?" The alarms continued to wail. On the screen, the Zyra'Kahl ships were taking up intercept positions. "My old life wasn't much to speak of, anyway," I replied with a reckless grin I didn't entirely feel. "What's the plan?" "And that, my friends, is how I accidentally traded my freedom for a warship, a death sentence, and the most dangerous woman in the known universe. Sometimes I wonder if I would do it all again, knowing what I know now. The terror, the pain, the loss. Then I look at her sleeping beside me, those strange patterns on her skin glowing softly in the darkness of our quarters, and I know the answer. Every time. I would choose her every single time. But I'm getting ahead of myself. For the freedom, before the trust, before anything resembling love, there was fear. There was suspicion. There was survival. "Take the secondary console," Zyra ordered, dropping into the captain's chair with fluid grace. "Weapon systems. Do you know how to operate phase cannons?" "I thought this ship was stripped of armaments," I said, hurrying to the indicated station. Her laugh was sharp and humorless. "And you believed that the auction ballisting was a cover. This ship has enough firepower to level a small colony." The console under my fingers hummed to life, displaying targeting systems far more advanced than anything I'd ever handled. "I've done some simulator training," I admitted, which was only a slight exaggeration. I'd played plenty of combat games in my time. Let's hope it's enough, she muttered, her fingers flying across the controls. Initiating emergency departure. The ship shuddered as docking clamps disengaged. Warning messages flashed across every screen. Unauthorized departure. Security protocols engaged. They're sealing the bay doors, I shouted, watching the massive metal barriers begin to close. Zyra didn't even blink. Then we make our own door. The ship surged forward, engines screaming in protest. I was thrown back against my seat as inertial dampeners struggled to compensate. Incoming transmission, I reported, seeing the alert flash on my screen. Ignore it, she snapped. Charge the forward batteries. On my mark. The bay doors were nearly closed, just a sliver of space remaining. The 3 Zyra'Kahl vessels hovered just beyond weapons visibly charging. Mark! I slammed my hand down on the activation sequence. The ship bucked as energy coursed through its frame. A blinding beam of concentrated plasma erupted from our bow, slicing through the bay doors like they were made of paper. Hold on, Zyra warned a second before she punched the thrusters to maximum. We shot through the molten gap in the doors, debris pinging off our hull. The station's automated defense systems opened fire, but we were already juking and weaving through a series of evasive maneuvers that pressed me hard against my restraints. Zyra'Kahl, craft in pursuit, I called out, watching the tactical display. They're fast, but predictable, Zyra responded, her voice eerily calm, as she executed a maneuver that should have torn our ship apart. Target the leader's propulsion system. Wait for my signal. The Zyra'Kahl ships were gaining their superior speed, closing the gap. Energy weapons lashed out, scoring glancing hits against our shields. Shields at 82%, I reported, trying to keep the panic from my voice. No. Acceptable, she replied, then suddenly yanked the controls, sending us into a stomach-churning roll that somehow put us behind our pursuers. Now fire. I didn't think. I just reacted, locking onto the lead ship and unleashing a barrage of firepower that would have made a destroyer proud. Direct hit. The Zyra'Kahl vessel spiraled out of control, venting atmosphere. Good. Zyra nodded, the closest thing to approval I'd seen from her. The others will break off to assist. It buys us time. She was right. The remaining 2 ships slowed, moving to assist their stricken companion. Setting course for the asteroid belt in the outer system, she announced. We can lose them there, make the jump to hyperspace. As the acceleration pressed me into my seat, I finally asked the question that had been burning in my mind. Why are they after you? Those silver eyes flicked to me, then back to the controls. That is a long story, Gabriel Reyes, one you may not want to hear. I think I've earned it, I countered, considering I'm now apparently on the run with you. A moment of silence, broken only by the hum of the engines and the occasional alert from the sensors. Very well, she finally conceded. But remember, you chose this path. And as our stolen, or was it rescued ship, hurtled toward the asteroid belt, Zyra began to tell me a tale of betrayal, genocide, and a terrible secret that would shake the foundations of the galactic powers. By the time she finished, nothing would ever be the same, especially not the way I looked at her. I was an operative for the Black Star Legion. Zyra began, her voice taking on a distant quality as we navigated deeper into the asteroid field. Her hands never stopped moving across the controls, guiding our ship through gaps that seemed impossibly narrow. A mercenary, I asked, still monitoring the pursuit craft. They had fallen back but hadn't given up. She made a sound that might have been a laugh. The Legion was more than that. We were warriors, yes, but also guardians, keepers of balance in a sector where the strong prey on the weak without consequence. A massive asteroid loomed ahead. Instead of going around it, as Zyra accelerated straight toward it, my knuckles went white on the edge of my console. We're going to hit that, I warned unnecessarily. No, she corrected, we're going through it. Before I could protest, she activated something labeled phase shift on her console. The ship shuddered, and for a sickening moment, everything around me seemed to blur. My stomach lurched as we literally passed through the solid rock of the asteroid, emerging on the other side intact. What the experimental technology, she explained, us shutting down the system immediately. Limited use, massive power drain, but the Zyra'Kahl can't follow us through solid matter. Sure enough, the pursuing ships were forced to go around buying us precious minutes. You were telling me about the Legion, I prompted once my heart rate had somewhat normalized. Her silver eyes dimmed slightly. 3 standard months ago, the Legion was wiped out. Every base, every outpost, every ship, methodically hunted down and destroyed by Imperium forces. The Imperium, I couldn't keep the shock from my voice. The Galactic Imperium was supposed to be the civilized force in the galaxy, the peacekeepers. Why would they target mercenaries? Because we discovered something we were never meant to find. Her voice had dropped to a near whisper. Data that could bring the entire Imperium crashing down. The ship rocked suddenly as we took a glancing hit from a piece of debris. Zyra corrected our course without missing a beat. This ship, your ship now, it contains that data. That's why it's so valuable. That's why I cannot let it fall into their hands. And that's why by claiming ownership, you've painted a target on your back as large as the one on mine. I let that sink in. In the space of an hour, I'd gone from nobody to enemy of the most powerful government in known space. What kind of data could possibly justify wiping out an entire organization? She turned those unsettling eyes on me, and for the first time I saw raw emotion in them. Pain, rage, loss. Evidence of systematic experimentation on sentient beings, thousands of them, primarily on humans. My blood went cold. Humans, why? Your species has something the Imperium wants, something unique in the galaxy. She turned back to the controls. But that's a conversation for when we're not being actively hunted. As if on cue, the proximity alert blared again. The Zyra'Kahl had caught up. We can't outrun them forever, I pointed out. No, Zyra'Kahl agreed, so we stopped running. With that enigmatic statement, she cut our engines completely. The ship went dark emergency lighting, casting eerie shadows across the bridge. What are you doing? I hissed. We're sitting ducks, powering down all non-essential systems, she replied calmly, redirecting energy to weapons in a very specific shield configuration. On the tactical display, I could see the Zyra'Kahl ships spreading out trying to box us in against a particularly dense cluster of asteroids. The Zyra'Kahl Guild operates on profit margins. Zyra explained that, her fingers dancing across the darkened console. They want this ship intact. They want me alive. This gives us an advantage. How exactly? Because I have no such constraints. Her voice was cold detached. When I give the word target, their life support systems. Not their engines, not their weapons, life support. I stared at her appalled. That would kill everyone on board. Yes, she agreed simply. It would. I can't do that, I protested. That's murder. For a moment, those silver eyes studied me, unreadable. Then surprisingly, she nodded. Your moral objection is unexpected, but perhaps there is another way. The Zyra'Kahl ships were closing in now, moving cautiously. Look closely at their formation, she instructed. See how the lead vessel is positioning itself. They're planning to disable us with an ion pulse, then board. I examined the tactical display and saw she was right. So what's our alternative to killing them? We let them think they've succeeded, she said, the ghost of a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Then we seize the advantage. Quickly, she outlined her plan. It was risky, borderline suicidal, but it didn't involve outright murder. I found myself nodding. This could work, I admitted, but it means trusting each other. You ready for that? Something flickered across her alien features. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. I have survived this long by trusting no one, Gabriel Reyes. Well, I replied, attempting a confidence. I didn't feel there's a first time for everything. The next few minutes were the longest of my life. We sat in near darkness as the Zyra'Kahl ships circled like vultures, gradually tightening their formation. Receiving transmission, I reported as the comm system lit up. Zyra nodded. Accept it. Remember the plan. I opened the channel and a harsh voice filled the bridge. Attention, rogue vessel. This is Commander Vex of the Zyra'Kahl Guild. Your engines are disabled, your position compromised. Surrender the call, female, and the ship, and you may be permitted to live human. I glanced at Zyra, who gave me a barely perceptible nod. This is Gabriel Reyes, I responded, trying to sound appropriately terrified and desperate. I'm just a salvage worker. I bought this ship at auction. I didn't know about the woman she took me hostage. Vex's laugh was like grinding metal. A convenient story. Where's the female now? Send them engineering deck. I lied. She went to try to restart the engines manually when we lost power. A pause. I could almost hear Vex calculating his odds, revising his strategy. Stand by for boarding human. Any resistance will result in your immediate termination. The transmission cut off. They're moving into position for the ion pulse, Zyra observed, watching the tactical display. Are you ready? I took a deep breath, checking that my harness was secure. As I'll ever be. Remember, timing is everything. She placed her hand briefly on my forearm, the first voluntary contact she'd initiated. And Gabriel, thank you for not choosing murder. Before I could respond, the world turned white as the Zyra'Kahl ion pulse hit us. Faux electrical surges cascaded across our consoles, all for show, part of Zyra's plan to make the attack seem successful. Now we wait, she whispered, barely audible, over the artificial sounds of failing systems. On the tactical display, the Zyra'Kahl ships were moving into boarding position. The largest vessel extended a docking tube towards our airlock. They're committed, I observed. Zyra nodded, her face illuminated by the emergency lighting, those strange patterns on her skin pulsing more rapidly. Charging real weapon systems now, she murmured, her fingers moving across hidden controls. They believe we're disabled. They've dropped their shields to conserve power during boarding. The sound of metal against metal reverberated through the ship as the Zyra'Kahl docking tube connected with our airlock. They're cutting through, I reported, watching the security feed. Let them think they're in control, Zyra reminded me, until they're not. The minutes stretched like hours as we listened to the Zyra'Kahl boarding party make their way through our ship. 4 of them moving with military precision, heading for the engineering deck, where they believed Zyra was hiding. Now, I asked, tension making my voice tight. Not yet, she replied, calm as still water. Let them split their forces. Finally, when the 2 of the Zyra'Kahl had broken off toward engineering and 2 were heading for the bridge, Zyra gave the signal. Now! I slammed my hand down on the activation sequence we'd prepared. The ship came roaring back to life, not sputtering or gradually, but all at once, systems surging with power deliberately held in reserve. Simultaneously, internal bulkheads slammed down, separating the Zyra'Kahl boarding team. The looks of shock on their faces as they realized they'd been tricked would have been comical in any other situation. Severing docking tube, Zyra announced, executing the command. The ship shuddered as we violently disconnected from the Zyra'Kahl vessel. Targeting their navigation systems, I called out, locking onto the vulnerable, unshielded Zyra'Kahl ships. Fire! Our weapons lashed out, precise and devastating, not aiming to destroy, but to disable. One by one, the Zyra'Kahl ships lost their ability to pursue because we systematically crippled their navigation and propulsion. What about the boarding party? I asked suddenly, remembering the 4 Zyra'Kahl still on our ship. Zyra's expression was grim, but not murderous. Emergency escape pods, Section 3 and Section 7. They'll live, but they'll have a long wait for rescue. I watched on the security feeds as the confused and angry Zyra'Kahl were forced into escape pods and ejected into space. The tiny pods would keep them alive until their comrades could retrieve them, but they weren't a threat anymore. Setting course away from the asteroid field, Zyra announced, preparing for hyperspace jump. As the stars began to stretch around us, signaling our transition to faster-than-light travel, I finally allowed myself to relax slightly. That was intense. I managed the understatement of the century. Zyra turned those silver eyes to me, something new in them, something almost like respect. You performed adequately, Gabriel Reyes. Coming from her, it felt like the highest praise. So, I ventured. But once we were safely in hyperspace, what happens now? Now, she said, rising from her seat with that fluid grace that seemed both beautiful and deadly. I show you what we're really fighting for. She led me deeper into the ship to a secured compartment I hadn't yet explored. Pressing her palm against a hidden scanner, she unlocked a door that slid open with a soft hiss. Inside was a small room, bare except for a single holographic projector in the center. This is why the Black Star Legion was destroyed, she said softly. This is why we're being hunted. The projector activated, filling the room with images that turned my stomach. Humans, hundreds of them in various states of experimentation. Some appeared partially dissected, still alive. Others showed signs of genetic modification gone horribly wrong. What am I looking at? I whispered, horrified. Project Ascension. Zyra replied, her voice tight with controlled rage. The Imperium's secret program to harvest what makes humans unique. Which is what exactly, Yovani? She turned to me, those alien eyes holding mine. Your adaptive capability. Your species can survive conditions that would kill most sentient beings. You evolved not just as a species, but as individuals. Your bodies change to meet challenges in ways no other known species can. The images continued to cycle, each more disturbing than the last. The Imperium wants to weaponize this ability, she continued. Create soldiers who can adapt to any battlefield, any environment, any weapon. These people, I gestured to the horrific images. They're test subjects. They were, she corrected grimly. None survived the procedures. I felt sick. And the Legion discovered this. Zyra's expression darkened. Not just discovered. We were unwitting participants. The Imperium contracted the Legion for what we believed were standard security operations. In reality, we were capturing humans for their experiments. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. You were hunting humans. For the first time, Zyra looked away, something like shame crossing her features. When we discovered the truth, our commander ordered an immediate cessation of all Imperium contracts. He then dispatched our fastest ships to spread the evidence throughout the galaxy. Her voice broke slightly. The Imperium's response was total. The systematic elimination of the entire Black Star Legion. Thousands killed to protect this secret. And you escaped with this ship, I concluded. With the evidence, she nodded once. I am the last of the Legion, and this ship, your ship, carries the most complete record of Project Ascension in existence. I stared at the continuing parade of horrors on the holographic display, trying to process it all. The Imperium, the supposed force for peace and stability in the galaxy, conducting secret experiments on humans, wiping out an entire mercenary organization to cover it up, and now hunting us. Turn it off, I finally said, unable to watch anymore. I've seen enough. Zyra deactivated the projector, plunging the room into relative darkness. In the dim light, I could see those strange patterns on her skin, pulsing with what I was beginning to recognize as agitation. Now you understand, she said quietly, what we face, what we carry. I nodded slowly. The question is, what do we do with it? Her silver eyes studied me. We have options. We find a remote system beyond Imperium control, live out our lives in hiding. We sell the data to the highest bidder. Perhaps the Draxian Confederation would pay handsomely for proof of Imperium atrocities. Or we expose it, I finished. We make sure everyone in the galaxy sees exactly what the Imperium has been doing. A moment of silence stretched between us, heavy with the weight of the decision. That would be a death sentence, Zyra finally said. The Imperium would never stop hunting us. We're already being hunted, I pointed out. At least this way it would mean something. Those alien eyes locked with mine, searching for what I wasn't sure. You would risk your life for people you've never met, for justice in the abstract. The question seemed genuine, not judgmental. I considered it carefully. I think, I said slowly, that some things are worth dying for. And stopping this, I gestured to where the holographic evidence had been, is one of them. Something shifted in her expression. Something fundamental. The Legion had a saying, she said softly. Honor is not found in victory, but in the causes for which we fight. Sounds like a good motto, I offered. It was, she agreed, a note of sadness in her melodic voice. Then straightening her shoulders, she added, we should rest. Hyperspace travel will take several hours, and we both need to recover our strength. She showed me to a small cabin that I assumed would be mine. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Zyra, thank you for trusting me with this. She paused in the doorway, those silver eyes unreadable. Trust is new territory for both of us, Gabriel Reyes. Let us hope it does not prove fatal. With that cheery thought, she was gone, leaving me alone with a head full of horrors and a strange growing feeling that despite everything, the danger, the odds against us, the uncertainty of our future, I was exactly where I was meant to be. As I lay on the narrow bunk staring at the unfamiliar ceiling of my new home, I realized something that should have terrified me but somehow didn't. In the space of a single day, I had tied my fate irrevocably to that of an alien woman I barely knew. And I didn't regret it for a second. The ship hummed around me, a mechanical lullaby that eventually pulled me into an exhausted sleep. My dreams were a kaleidoscope of silver eyes, experimental chambers, and stars stretching into infinity as we ran for our lives. I woke to the sound of alarms. I burst onto the bridge, still disoriented from sleep, to find Zyra already at the controls. Her movements were precise but urgent, those strange patterns on her skin pulsing rapidly. "What's happening?" I demanded, dropping into the secondary chair. "Hyperspace disruption," she replied tersely. "We're being forced back into normal space." My stomach lurched as the ship shuddered violently, stars reappearing in the view screen as we were wrenched from the safety of hyperspace. "I thought that was impossible," I said, hastily activating my console. "Difficult and expensive, not impossible." Zyra's fingers flew across the controls. "Only the Imperium has this technology. The Zyra'Kahl must have reported our escape." The final jolt threw us both forward against our restraints as the ship fully materialized in normal space. Warning indicators flashed across every screen. "Damage report," Zyra called them out. I scanned the diagnostics. "Hyperspace drive offline. Shield generator strained but functional. Weapons systems operational." "Scan the area," she ordered. "If they pulled us out of hyperspace, they're here somewhere." I activated the long-range sensors and my blood went cold at what I saw. 3 ships, large signatures, Imperium Predator-class cruisers. Zyra's expression didn't change, but the patterns on her skin dimmed slightly, a reaction I was beginning to recognize as her version of fear. "1 Predator would be concerning," she said quietly. 3 is unprecedented." The tactical display updated, showing the Imperium vessels moving to surround us. They were massive compared to our ship, bristling with weapons. "They're hailing us," I reported as the comm system lit up. Zyra nodded once. "Accept. Let me handle this." The main screen flickered, revealing the stern face of an Imperium commander. His uniform was immaculate, his expression cold and superior. "Rogue vessel," he began without preamble. "This is Commander Thalius of the Imperium Security Force. You are harboring a fugitive and carrying stolen military intelligence. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Zyra's voice was calm, almost conversational when she replied, "Commander Thalius, how interesting that the Imperium would send 3 Predator-class cruisers for 1 small ship. Someone must be very worried about what we were carrying." Thalius's expression hardened. "You have 1 minute to comply. Lower your shields and prepare to be boarded." "And if we refuse," Zyra challenged, "then we will recover what we need from your debris field." The transmission cut off abruptly. I stared at the tactical display, watching the Imperium ships tighten their formation around us. "Please tell me you have a plan." "I always have a plan, Gabriel." Her silver eyes met mine briefly. "But you may not like it. At this point, I'll take anything over becoming space dust." The ghost of a smile touched her lips. "The Sargos Nebula is approximately 600,000 kilometers from our position. If we can reach it, their sensors will be useless." I checked the navigation display and felt my hope fade. "We'll never make it. They've got us surrounded and they're faster than we are." "Yes," she agreed calmly, "which is why we're going to do something very, very stupid." Before I could ask what she meant, Zyra's hands darted across the controls. Our ship lurched forward, accelerating directly toward the largest of the Imperium cruisers. "Are you insane?" I shouted, gripping my console as G-forces pressed me back into my seat. "We're going to crash. Trust me," was all she said, her focus absolute, and she guided our vessel on what looked like a suicide run. The Imperium ships hesitated just for a moment, clearly confused by our seemingly suicidal tactics. In that moment of uncertainty, Zyra executed a maneuver that should have been physically impossible. Our ship rolled and twisted somehow, threading the needle between 2 of the massive cruisers. Proximity warnings screamed as we passed close enough to see individual viewports on the Imperium vessels. "Weapons ready," Zyra called out. "Target their rear sensor array as we pass." Now, I fired everything we had, watching as our weapons tore into the vulnerable sensors at the back of the Imperium cruiser. Not enough to cripple it, but enough to buy us precious seconds of confusion. "They're repositioning," I reported, watching the tactical display, "coming about to pursue." "Good try, Denon," Zyra said, surprising me. "Let them chase us." She adjusted our course, pushing our engines to maximum as we raced toward the distant nebula. The Imperium cruisers followed exactly as she'd predicted. "They're gaining on us," I warned, watching the distance between us shrink. "As expected," she replied, maddeningly calm. "Their ships are faster in open space, but they're also less maneuverable." Even as she spoke, the first energy blasts from the pursuing cruisers lashed out, most missing, but one grazing our shields. "Shields at 78%, I reported, fighting to keep my voice steady. "We can't take many direct hits." "We won't have to." Zyra'S voice took on a new intensity. "There, ahead." I followed her gaze to the view screen and saw what she'd been looking for, an asteroid field on the edge of the nebula. Not the dense, tightly packed field we'd navigated earlier, but a scattered region of massive rocks, some as large as small moons. "Perfect," Zyra murmured, more to herself than to me. The first of the asteroids loomed ahead, and Zyra guided our ship into the field without slowing. The Imperium cruisers followed, but more cautiously, their massive size making them ill-suited for close-quarters maneuvering. "They're spreading out," I observed, "trying to box us in." "They're also getting overconfident," Zyra replied. "Bye. Watch." She cut our speeds suddenly, allowing one of the Imperium ships to pull ahead. As it moved to block our path, Zyra abruptly changed course, diving beneath an enormous rotating asteroid. "What are you doing?" I asked, bewildered by her tactics. "Setting up the perfect shot," she responded. "Target the asteroid, not the ship. Full power to forward batteries." Understanding dawned as I saw what she was planning. I locked onto the massive asteroid and fired our weapons, carving deep gouges into its surface, destabilizing its rotation. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the Imperium. The asteroid began to tumble erratically directly into the path of the pursuing cruiser, too massive to destroy, with weapons too unpredictable to evade. With their limited maneuverability, the Imperium ship had no choice but to veer sharply away, colliding with a smaller asteroid in the process. "Damage to their port side," I reported, unable to keep the excitement from my voice. "They're falling back. One down," Zyra acknowledged, already focusing on the next threat. 2 to go. The remaining Imperium ships were more cautious now, coordinating their movements to close in on us from different angles. Energy weapons stabbed through space, most missing, as Zyra guided our vessel through a dizzying series of evasive maneuvers. "They're hurting us," I realized, studying their formation, "driving us away from the nebula." "Yes," Zyra agreed. "Very astute, Gabriel, but predictable tactics can be used against them." She abruptly cut our engines, letting momentum carry us forward as she rotated the ship 180 degrees. Now we were flying backward, facing our pursuers. "All power to forward shields," she ordered. "Weapons ready." The Imperium ships pressed their advantage, closing in rapidly now that we appeared to be in trouble. "Shields at maximum," I confirmed, "but they won't hold against sustained fire from both cruisers." "They don't need to," Zyra replied cryptically. "Just a little closer." The Imperium ships were nearly on top of us now, their weapons charging for what would surely be a devastating volley. "Now!" Zyra shouted, slamming her hand down on a control I hadn't seen before. Our ship lurched sickeningly as emergency thrusters fired in reverse, stopping our backward momentum and sending us plummeting downward relative to the plane of engagement. The sudden maneuver caught the Imperium ships by surprise, forcing them to veer sharply to avoid colliding with each other. "Perfect," Zyra breathed, her fingers dancing across the controls. "Target the space between them. Full power." I fired without question, our weapons not aiming for either ship, but for the empty space they were both trying to occupy. The energy discharge created a blinding flash, and more importantly, a momentary sensor blackout for both Imperium vessels. In that fraction of a second of blindness, they lost track of our position, and each other's. The resulting collision wasn't catastrophic, but it was enough. The two massive cruisers scraped against one another, emergency thrusters firing wildly as they tried to separate. "Engines to maximum," Zyra'Kahl ordered. "Course for the nebula now." Our ship shot forward, leaving the tangled Imperium vessels behind as we raced for the safety of the Sargos Nebula. Its multicolored gases loomed larger in the view screen with each passing second. "They're disengaging," I reported, watching the tactical display. "Coming after us again." "Too late," Zyra replied with grim satisfaction as we crossed the boundary into the nebula. The effect was immediate. Our own sensors went fuzzy, but the nebula's interference would affect the Imperium ships far more severely. Their size and power requirements meant they relied heavily on precision targeting systems. Systems that were now all but useless. "Can they follow us in here?" I asked, watching the view screen fill with swirling purple and blue gases. "They can try," Zyra said, finally allowing herself to relax slightly. "But it would be like hunting a shadow with your eyes closed." We pushed deeper into the nebula, the gases growing thicker around us until the stars disappeared completely. On the tactical display, the Imperium ships hovered at the boundary, unwilling to risk their massive vessels in the dangerous sensor-blocking clouds. "Now what?" I asked, the adrenaline of the chase beginning to fade, leaving me shaky and exhausted. Zyra turned those silver eyes to me, and for the first time I saw genuine warmth in them. "Now, Gabriel Reyes, I officially acknowledge that you are a worthy partner in this endeavor." It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close enough that my heart did a strange little stutter. "High praise from the last warrior of the Black Star Legion," I replied, attempting lightness despite my exhaustion. "Not given lightly," she assured me, rising from her seat with that fluid grace I was coming to admire. "The hyperspace drive will need repairs before we can resume our journey. I suggest you rest while I assess the damage." I shook my head. "I know my way around engines. Let me help." Something flickered across her alien features. Surprise, perhaps. "Very well," she conceded after a moment. "2 sets of hands will make the work go faster." We spent the next several hours in the engine room, working side by side to repair the damage caused by the forced hyperspace exit. It was grueling technical work, but there was something oddly intimate about it, passing tools back and forth, problem solving, together the occasional brush of her skin against mine as we maneuvered in the cramped space. I found myself studying her when she wasn't looking. The way those luminescent patterns ebbed and flowed beneath her skin, sometimes in rhythm with her breathing, sometimes in response to her emotions. The precise, deliberate way she moved, wasting no energy, every gesture efficient and purposeful. "You're staring, Gabriel," she observed without looking up from the circuit assembly she was repairing. I felt heat rise to my face. "Sorry, your species is fascinating." "As is yours," she replied, glancing up at me with those silver eyes. "Though in very different ways." "What do you mean?" She set down her tools, giving me her full attention, a rare occurrence that made my pulse quicken slightly. "My people, the Call, are known for our biological consistency. We do not vary greatly in appearance or capability. We are born what we will be." She gestured to the patterns on her skin. "These markings are identical to my mother's and her mother's before her. Our path is predetermined." "And humans aren't," I guessed. "Humans," she said, a note of something like wonder in her voice, "are gloriously unpredictable. You are born so helpless, so unformed. And yet you become anything, everything, soldiers, scholars, criminals, heroes, often within the same lifetime. You change, adapt, grow in ways my people cannot comprehend." "Is that why the Imperium is experimenting on us?" I asked quietly. "This adaptability." The patterns on her skin dimmed slightly. "Yes, they seek to harness it, weaponize it. The ultimate soldier, one who adapts to any battlefield, any weapon, any environment." She looked away. "It is an abomination." "Why does it bother you so much?" I ventured. "I mean, beyond the obvious moral issues. You seem, Michaud, personally offended by it." For a long moment she was silent, and I thought she might not answer. Then so softly I almost missed it, she said, "Because my people once walked a similar path." My surprise must have shown on my face because she continued, her voice taking on a formal quality, as if reciting a painful history. "Centuries ago, the Call were conquerors. We believed our biological consistency made us superior perfect. We saw the adaptability of species like yours, not as strength, but as weakness, proof of poor design, evolutionary desperation." Her silver eyes met mine, filled with old shame. "We were wrong, terribly wrong." "What happened?" I asked gently. "We encountered a disease our consistent biology could not fight. A plague that spread through our empire like fire, killing millions. And the species we had conquered, those inferior, adaptable beings, many of them survived, their bodies changing to combat the threat." She gestured to the patterns on her skin. These markings are not natural to my species. They are the result of genetic modification using adaptive DNA from species like yours to save what remained of my people. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. You're part human. A very small part, she clarified. Less than 2% of my genetic code, but enough to give us these luminescent patterns and the immune adaptability that came with them. So the call were saved by the very trait you once despised? I concluded. Yes, she acknowledged. It is why the Legion's cause became my own so completely. The Imperium walks the same dark path my ancestors once traveled. I cannot allow history to repeat itself. The raw honesty of her confession hung in the air between us, creating a new kind of intimacy, the kind born of shared vulnerability. Thank you, I said simply, for telling me. She nodded once, then returned to her work, but something had shifted between us. A barrier had fallen, a trust had deepened. We worked in comfortable silence for another hour before Zyra finally announced, it's done. The hyperspace drive should function at approximately 82% efficiency. Not ideal, but sufficient for our needs. Where to now, I asked, wiping grease from my hands. Those silver eyes met mine, searching. That depends on our next move, Gabriel. We still have decisions to make. I knew what she meant. Run, sell, or expose. The fate of the data and ourselves still hung in the balance. Let's discuss it over food, I suggested. I'm starving, and I'm guessing you need sustenance too, unless your species runs on pure determination. The corners of her mouth twitched upward, the closest thing to a smile I'd seen from her yet. Food would be acceptable, she agreed. Though I must warn you, our dietary preferences may differ significantly. As long as you don't need to eat me, I think we can work something out, I joked. Her expression turned serious. The consumption of sentient beings is highly taboo among the Kahl. That was a joke, Zyra. Ah, she looked momentarily confused. Human humor, still an area of study for me. As we made our way to the galley, I realized with a start that I was beginning to genuinely like this strange, intense alien woman. Not just respect her abilities or admire her dedication, but actually enjoy her company. And judging by the brightening patterns on her skin, whenever our eyes met, I was beginning to suspect the feeling might be mutual. The ship's galley was surprisingly well appointed for a vessel of its size. I rummaged through the storage compartments, finding a variety of preserved foods, some recognizably human, others distinctly alien. Quite a selection, I commented, pulling out what appeared to be a self-heating meal packet. The Legion ate well. We were often deployed for extended periods. Zyra explained, studying the food options with clinical interest. Proper nutrition was considered essential for combat readiness. I activated the heating element on my packet, some kind of synthetic protein with vegetable, and waited for it to warm up. What about you? I asked, gesturing to the array of options. What does a Kahl warrior eat? She selected a blue-tinted packet from a separate compartment. Our metabolic requirements are similar to humans in caloric needs, though we process nutrients differently. She activated her own heating element. This contains proteins and minerals compatible with my physiology. We sat across from each other at the small table, an oddly domestic scene given our circumstances. For a few minutes, we ate in comfortable silence. I was hungrier than I'd realized, and the food, while not gourmet, was better than what I'd been living on for months. So, I finally ventured, setting down my empty container. The Imperium is looking for us. The Zyra'Kahl Guild is looking for us. We have data that could change the galaxy. What's our move? Zyra finished her meal with deliberate precision before answering. Logic would suggest we should run. Find a remote system beyond Imperium control, live quietly. But, I prompted, sensing her hesitation. But that is not why I saved this data, she admitted. Not why my comrades died protecting it. You want to expose it? I concluded. Make sure everyone knows what the Imperium has been doing. Those silver eyes studied me. What I want is inconsequential. This decision affects both of us now. Your opinion matters, Gabriel. The statement caught me off guard. In the short time I'd known her, Zyra had been many things: competent, intimidating, occasionally terrifying, but never deferential. You're asking what I think we should do. Yes, the patterns on her skin pulse steadily, calmly. You have earned that right. I considered the question carefully. The sensible choice was clearly to run to find some distant corner of the galaxy where we could disappear. Maybe even sell the data for enough credits to live comfortably for the rest of our lives. But I couldn't shake the images I'd seen. The human test subjects. The atrocities committed in the name of military advancement. We expose it, I said finally. We make sure everyone knows exactly what the Imperium has been doing to humans. Something flickered across Zyra'S face, approval perhaps, or relief. This path carries the greatest risk, she warned, though I could tell she wasn't trying to dissuade me. The Imperium will never stop hunting us. I know, I acknowledged, but I couldn't live with it myself if we did anything else. Could you? The patterns beneath her skin brightened subtly. No, she admitted, I could not. Then it's settled. I tried for a confident smile. We become the galaxy's most wanted whistleblowers. There is a complication, Zyra added. Distributing this data widely enough to prevent the Imperium from suppressing it will be difficult. We would need access to multiple high-security communications networks simultaneously. What about the Black Star Legion, I suggested. You said some ships escaped with copies of the data. Maybe we could find them. Coordinate a shadow passed across her alien features. I have been attempting to contact any surviving Legion vessels since the attack. There have been no responses. The implications hung heavy in the air between us. If Zyra truly was the last of the Legion, our task had just become exponentially more difficult. Before I could respond, the ship's alert system activated a soft chime rather than the blaring alarm of a proximity alert. Incoming transmission, Zyra said, already rising from her seat. We hurried to the bridge where the communication console was flashing steadily. Source, I asked, settling into my now familiar seat. Zyra's fingers danced across the controls, her expression intensifying. Unknown, but the encryption signature. Her voice trailed off, those silver eyes widening slightly. It's Legion. My pulse quickened. I thought you said there were no survivors. None that responded to my calls, she corrected, working rapidly to decrypt the incoming message. This is what makes it different. A dead drop protocol activated remotely. Remote meaning a message left in a secure location programmed to transmit only under specific circumstances. Her patterns pulsed more rapidly, betraying her excitement or anxiety. I still couldn't always tell which. It could be from before the purge. Finally, the decryption completed and the main screen flickered to life. The face that appeared was similar to Zoro's, clearly Kahl, with the same luminescent patterns beneath the skin, though his were a deeper blue compared to her teal coloration. Commander Tarek, Zyra breathed, genuine emotion coloring her voice for the first time. The recording began to play. This message is encoded for Zyra, Kahl, Tactical Officer of the 3rd Fleet. If you are receiving this, circumstances have unfolded as I feared. The Legion has likely fallen. The Kahl commander's expression was grim but resolute. What we discovered about Project Ascension is only part of a larger truth. The data you carry is incomplete, deliberately so. Zyra and I exchanged a surprised glance. The complete files were too dangerous to entrust to any single vessel, the commander continued. We divided them into 3 segments, each sent with a different ship. You have segment D and your segment 2. The others contain the foundation of the project and its true purpose. My stomach tightened. If what we'd already seen was only part of the story, the coordinates for the rendezvous point are encoded in this transmission. If any of us survive, we will meet there in exactly 60 days from the initial data discovery. The commander's patterns dimmed noticeably. If I do not survive, Zyra, the command falls to you. Complete the mission. Expose the truth. Honor the Legion. The transmission ended, leaving us in stunned silence. When was the initial data discovery? I finally asked. 58 days ago, Zyra replied softly. The rendezvous is in 2 days. Hope and suspicion warred within me. This could be a trap. The Imperium could have forced your commander to record this message. Possible, she acknowledged, but unlikely. There were authentication codes embedded in the transmission that only the highest-ranking Legion officers knew. So we go to these coordinates, I concluded. See if anyone else survived. Zyra nodded, already entering the coordinates into the navigation system. It's approximately 18 hours away, even with hyperspace. We should prepare the ship. As she worked, I studied her profile, noting the subtle changes in her demeanor. The message had affected her deeply, seeing her commander again, hearing that there might be other survivors. "You respected him," I observed. "Your commander." "Tarek was exceptional," she agreed. "He discovered the truth about Project Ascension personally, infiltrated an Imperium facility after becoming suspicious of our contracts." Her voice softened. "He was the one who ordered me to take this ship to protect the data at all costs." "And now you might see him again," I said, trying to sound encouraging despite my own reservations about the rendezvous. Something changed in her expression, a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. I thought I was the only one left. Gabriel, the last of my kind in many ways. To think others might have survived. Impulsively, I reached out and placed my hand over hers. It was the first time I'd initiated contact between us, and I half expected her to pull away. Instead, those alien fingers curled slightly, accepting the gesture. "We'll find out soon enough," I assured her. "For now, let's focus on getting there in one piece." We spent the next few hours preparing the ship for the journey. The hyperspace drive was operational, but not at full efficiency, meaning we needed to plot our course carefully. Zyra focused on navigation while I worked on ensuring our weapon systems were fully charged, just in case the rendezvous turned out to be less friendly than we hoped. When everything was ready, we reconvened on the bridge for the hyperspace jump. "Course laid in," Zyra announced. "Hyperspace drive at 79% efficiency. It will be sufficient." "Weapons and shields at full capacity, or boss," I reported. "We're as ready as we'll ever be." Zyra nodded, those silver eyes meeting mine. "Gabriel, I thank you for your assistance, your support." The words seemed difficult for her, as if expressing gratitude wasn't something that came naturally. "We're partners now, right?" I replied with a smile. "In this together." The patterns beneath her skin brightened subtly. "Yes, partners." With that, she activated the hyperspace drive, and the stars stretched into streaming lines around us as we accelerated beyond light speed. The journey passed uneventfully, giving us time to rest and recover from our earlier battles. I used some of the time to further explore the ship, familiarizing myself with its layout and systems. It was an impressive vessel, clearly designed for both combat and stealth operations. In one of the cargo holds, I discovered a collection of personal items, presumably belonging to the previous crew. Most were unidentifiable alien artifacts, but some were recognizably keepsakes. A hollow image of what appeared to be a Kahl family unit, a decorative blade with intricate engravings, a small container of iridescent stones. Those belonged to Vex-Tar, our weapons specialist. Zyra's voice came from behind me, startling me slightly. I hadn't heard her approach. "I'm sorry, I said, quickly setting down the container of stones I'd been examining. "I didn't mean to intrude on private belongings." "It's your ship now," she reminded me, though her tone held no accusation. "And they are gone, objects without owners." There was a melancholy in her voice that made me turn to face her fully. "Tell me about them, your crew." She seemed surprised by the request, those silver eyes widening slightly. "Why would that interest you?" "Because they were important to you," I said simply, "and because if we're the ones carrying their legacy forward, I'd like to know who they were." For a moment, she stood perfectly still, those luminescent patterns pulsing slowly beneath her skin. Then, to my surprise, she sat down on a nearby cargo container and began to speak. Vex-Tar was from the southern islands of our homeworld. He could hit a target at 2,000 meters without targeting assistance. He had 3 offspring and played the kithara, a string instrument, beautifully. Her voice softened with memory. Nala was our engineer, not Kahl, but Trillion. 4 arms perfect for delicate repair work. She had a laugh that echoed through the whole ship. One by one, she described the crew members who had once called this ship home. Their skills, their quirks, their small kindnesses, and occasional conflicts. As she spoke, the luminescent patterns beneath her skin shifted and changed, sometimes brightening, sometimes dimming, reflecting emotions I could only guess at. I sat and listened, offering nothing but my attention. It seemed like something she needed to speak their names to remember them as individuals rather than just fallen comrades. When she finally fell silent, the cargo hold was bathed in the soft blue glow of hyperspace, filtering through the small viewport. "Thank you," I said simply. "For what?" she asked, genuine confusion in her voice. For sharing them with me, I replied. It can't be easy being the one who survived. She looked away, those silver eyes focusing on something distant. There is a call saying the last breath carries the weight of all who came before. I never truly understood it until now. Before I could respond, the ship's alert system chimed softly. We're approaching the rendezvous coordinates, Zyra said, rising gracefully to her feet. We should return to the bridge. The tension was palpable as we dropped out of hyperspace. The view screen showed a vast emptiness, no planets, no stations, just the distant sparkle of stars and the faint purple glow of a nebula on the far horizon. There's nothing here, I observed, scanning the sensor readouts. That was the point, Zyra explained, checking her own console. Deep space rendezvous, no civilization, no patrols, nothing to attract attention. Are we early? She shook her head. Within the designated window. If anyone survived, they should be here. For several long minutes, we waited in silence, sensors scanning the seemingly empty space around us. My hope began to fade as the minutes stretched on with no sign of any other vessels. Then, just as I was about to suggest we consider alternatives, a small alert pinged on Zyra's console. Energy signature, she reported, suddenly alert. Faint but present, approximately 10,000 kilometers to port. Ship, I asked, already bringing weapon systems online just in case. Too small, she replied, frowning at the readings, and the signature is wrong for a vessel. It's more like a beacon, I finished as the signature resolved on my own screen. It's a transmitter of some kind. Zyra nodded, already adjusting our course. We should investigate. We approached cautiously, sensors at maximum sensitivity, alert for any sign of a trap. As we drew closer, the object came into visual range, a small metallic sphere, perhaps a meter in diameter, floating in the emptiness of space. Legion emergency cache, Zyra identified it, relief evident in her voice. Standard protocol for missed rendezvous. Can we bring it aboard? I asked. She nodded, already working the controls, activating retrieval systems. A few minutes later, the sphere rested on the deck of our cargo bomb. Zyra approached it reverently, placing her palm against a scanner on its surface. The sphere responded immediately, luminescent patterns, similar to those on her skin, flowing across its metallic surface. DNA confirmation accepted, a synthetic voice announced. Welcome, Tactical Officer Zyra'Kahl. The sphere split open, revealing its contents, a data crystal glowing with the same blue-green light as Zyra's skin patterns and a small hollow projector. Zyra activated the projector, and once again the image of Commander Tarek appeared before us. Zyra, if you are viewing this message, then I have failed to make the rendezvous. His expression was grim but resolute. I must assume the worst, that the Legion has fallen and that you may be one of the few survivors. I glanced at Zyra, saw the way her posture had stiffened, her patterns dimming with grief. The data crystal contains the third segment of the Project Ascension files. The commander continued. Combined with the segment you already possess, it should provide a more complete picture. The first segment was entrusted to Carrier 4 under Captain Nexor. Zyra's reaction was immediate, a sharp intake of breath. Nexor, she whispered, a new hope entering her voice. If Nexor survived, he will follow protocol and make for the secondary rendezvous point in the Talaris system, Tarek explained, as if answering her directly. You know the location. The commander's expression grew even more serious. What you do not know, what none but I and the High Command knew, is the true extent of Project Ascension. It is not merely experimentation on humans, Zyra. It is the systematic harvesting of an entire species for genetic material. My blood ran cold at his words. The Imperium is not merely creating soldiers, Tarek continued. They are attempting to recreate the Ascended Ones, the ancient enemy our ancestors fled centuries ago. They believe they can control what they create. His patterns dimmed to an almost imperceptible glow. They are wrong. The message ended abruptly, leaving us staring at empty air. The Ascended Ones, I asked, breaking the heavy silence. Who are they? Zyra's expression was haunted, the patterns beneath her skin barely visible. They were a legend among my people. Genetically modified warriors created during the ancient wars before the Call joined the galactic community. Created by your people, I guessed. She nodded slowly. According to the legends, the Ascended Ones were the perfect soldiers, adaptable, unstoppable, loyal. Until they weren't. Her silver eyes met mine. They turned on their creators, nearly wiping out our entire species. It was our darkest hour, the reason we abandoned genetic modification and warfare. And now the Imperium is trying to recreate them, I said, the full implications dawning on me. Using human genetic material. Yes, Zyra'S voice was barely above a whisper. Now you understand why this data is so dangerous and so essential to expose. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to process the enormity of what we discovered. We need to find this Captain Nexor, get the final piece of the puzzle. Zyra was already moving toward the bridge, the data crystal clutched tightly in her hand. The Talaris system is 3 days away at maximum hyperspace efficiency. We should depart immediately. I followed a new determination settling over me. What had begun as a simple matter of exposing experimentation on humans had suddenly expanded into something far more ominous, a threat not just to my species but potentially to the entire galaxy. As we prepared for the hyperspace jump to the Talaris system, I couldn't help but notice a change in Zyra. The knowledge that another Legion ship might have survived had given her a renewed purpose, an intensity that was almost tangible. "You know this Captain Nexor well?" I asked as we worked side by side on the bridge. The patterns beneath her skin brightened subtly. "Yes, he is a friend, more than a friend perhaps, in another life." The admission surprised me and I felt an unexpected twinge of something that might have been jealousy. "I see," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. Zyra's silver eyes studied me, seeing more than I was comfortable revealing. "Does that concern you, Gabriel?" "No," I lied, then immediately corrected myself. "Maybe, I don't know. These past days have been intense." "Yes," she agreed softly. "They have." Something unspoken hung in the air between us, a tension that had nothing to do with the dangers we faced and everything to do with the strange, unexpected connection that had formed. Before either of us could say more, the ship's alert system activated. Not the gentle chime of an incoming transmission, but the harsh blare of a proximity warning. Multiple signatures. Zyra reported all personal matters forgotten as she turned to her console. Emerging from behind the moon of the nearby gas giant. My stomach dropped as the tactical display updated. Imperium signatures, 5 vessels. How did they find us? Zyra's expression hardened. The beacon. It must have been compromised. Her hands flew across the controls, preparing for emergency jump to hyperspace. But we both knew it was already too late. The Imperium ships were closing fast, their formation designed to cut off any escape route. Incoming transmission. I reported seeing the alert flash on my screen. Zyra hesitated, then nodded. "Accept it. Let's hear what they have to say." The main screen flickered and a face appeared that made Zyra's patterns go completely dark with shock. It wasn't an Imperium commander. It was a call with familiar luminescent patterns. "Hello, Zyra," said Captain Nexor, his expression unreadable. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Nexor, Zyra's voice was barely above a whispered disbelief etched across her alien features. "You're alive." The call captain on the screen smiled, but there was something wrong about it, too cold, too calculated. The luminescent patterns beneath his skin pulsed in a rhythm that made Zyra's own patterns dim further. "In a manner of speaking," he replied cryptically, "I see you've acquired a human pet. How progressive of you." I bristled at the description, but kept my mouth shut. Something was very wrong here, and antagonizing him wouldn't help us understand what. "The Imperium signatures," Zyra said, her composure returning. "You're working with them." It wasn't a question. The tactical displays showed the 5 vessels' enormous Imperium warships moving to surround us with Nexor's ship at the center of their formation. "Working with them, no." Nexor's smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed sharper than they should have been. "They work for me now." Zyra's fingers moved subtly across her console, initiating a scan of Nexor's ship. I followed her lead, trying to gather as much information as possible while keeping the conversation going. "What happened to you?" "Oh," she asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil I could see in her dimmed patterns. "What happened to the Legion?" "Evolution happened, Zyra." He leaned closer to the camera, and I noticed fine web-like veins pulsing beneath his skin, similar to Kale patterns but distorted wrong. The Legion was limited by outdated principles. Honor, duty, restraint. He spat the words like they tasted foul. I glimpsed something greater. The scan results appeared on my console and my blood ran cold. Nexor's ship wasn't just accompanied by Imperium vessels, it had been extensively modified with technology that matched nothing in our database. Project Ascension. I murmured the pieces, falling into place. You're part of it. Nexor's gaze shifted to me, and I felt an involuntary shudder run down my spine. His eyes were still Kahl's silver pupilless, but there was something else there, something hungry. Clever human, he acknowledged with a nod. Yes, when the Legion discovered the project, most reacted with horror, with righteous indignation. His expression twisted with contempt. But I saw opportunity, the next stage of evolution. You betrayed us, Zyra said, her voice hollow with realization. You gave the Imperium the Legion's defense codes, our locations. I gave them obsolete warriors in exchange for becoming something greater. He straightened, pride evident in his posture. The Imperium believed they were using me. They thought I was just another test subject, another stepping stone toward their perfect soldier. A harsh laugh escaped him. They didn't realize what they were creating until it was too late. On my tactical display, I noticed something disturbing. The Imperium ships were maintaining formation, but their movements were strangely synchronized, almost like extensions of Nexor's vessel, rather than independent crafts. He's controlling them somehow, I whispered to Zyra, keeping my voice low enough that the comms wouldn't pick it up. She nodded almost imperceptibly, having noticed the same thing. What do you want, Nexor? She asked, directly buying us time while her fingers continued their subtle dance across the console, searching for an escape route. What belongs to me, he replied simply. The data segments, all three pieces of the puzzle. His distorted patterns pulsed more rapidly. I have the first segment, you recovered the third from Tarek's cache, and you've had the second all along. Together, they contain the complete formula for what I've become, what I can make others become. And if we refuse, I challenged, unable to stay silent any longer. Those hungry eyes fixed on me again. Then I take what I want from your corpse as human, though I'd prefer Zara alive. She always was. Special. I felt a surge of protective anger at the way he looked at her, like she was a possession to be claimed. You're outnumbered and outgunned, Ishfo, he continued, gesturing to the Imperium ships surrounding us. There's nowhere to run. Give me the data willingly, and you may yet have a place in what comes next. Zyra's expression remained impassive, but I could see the calculations happening behind those silver eyes. We need time to consider, she finally said. Nexor's distorted smile widened. Of course, I'll give you 1 hour to make the sensible choice. The transmission cut off abruptly. The moment the screen went dark, Zyra turned to me, her voice urgent but controlled. We have perhaps 10 minutes, not an hour. He's lying to keep us complacent while he positions his forces for a boarding action. What's the plan? I asked, already bringing weapon systems to full readiness. We can't fight our way out of this. No, she agreed, but we don't need to. Her fingers flew across the controls, pulling up schematics of our ship. The data is what matters. We must ensure it reaches the right hands, even if we don't. My stomach tightened at her words. You're talking about a suicide mission. Those silver eyes met mine, filled with determination and something else, regret, perhaps. Not for both of us, she said softly. The ship has a stealth escape pod, one-person minimal signature. With the right distraction, it could slip past their blockade. I understood immediately what she was suggesting. No way. I'm not leaving you behind. Gabriel, her voice took on a gentler tone than I'd ever heard from her. This is larger than either of us. The data must reach the Coalition. They're the only power strong enough to challenge the Imperium with this evidence. Then you take the pod, I countered. You know more about this than I do. You'd have a better chance of convincing the Coalition. She shook her head. Nexor knows me. He knows how I think, how I move. He'd anticipate that strategy. Her patterns brightened slightly. But you, a human, an unknown variable, you might succeed where I would fail. I wanted to argue further, but the tactical display showed the Imperium ships beginning to close their formation. Our time was running out. How would I find the Coalition? I asked, hate myself for even considering her plan. Relief flickered across her features as she realized I was reluctantly coming around to her thinking. The pod has pre-programmed coordinates. A coalition outpost in the Vega sector, not their headquarters, but a station with direct communication access to their high command. She moved to a storage compartment near the navigation console and retrieved a small device similar to the data crystal we'd recovered from Tarek's cache, but smaller. This contains both data segments and my personal authentication codes, she explained, pressing it into my hand. The Coalition knows of the Legion. They will listen when you tell them what has happened. Our fingers touched, lingered. The patterns on her skin brightened where our skin met. And what about you? I asked, my voice rougher than I intended. What's your plan? I will ensure you have time to escape, she replied simply. I will engage next, or keep his attention focused on this vessel. That's not a plan, that's a suicide note, I protested. A small, sad smile curved her lips. Perhaps, but it is my choice, Gabriel, as this has been from the beginning. Before I could argue further, the proximity alert blared again. The tactical display updated, showing 2 of the Imperium vessels breaking formation, moving to flank us. They're making their move, Lyra observed. Earlier than I expected. She fixed those silver eyes on me, intense and urgent. We have no more time for debate. The escape pod is located on Deck 3, Section 8. Go, now. Every instinct in me rebelled against the idea of leaving her to face Nexor alone. But the weight of the data crystal in my hand reminded me of what was at stake, not just our lives, but potentially those of millions. I'll come back for you, I promised, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. When the Coalition knows the truth, I'll bring them back here. Something soft and vulnerable flickered across her alien features. Gabriel. The ship rocked suddenly as one of the Imperium vessels fired a warning shot across our bow. Go, Zyra urged, already turning back to the controls, preparing for battle. I hesitated for one more second, then did something reckless and possibly stupid. I pulled her toward me and pressed my lips against hers, a human gesture she might not even understand. To my surprise, she responded, her hand coming up to touch my face gently. The contact lasted only a moment before she pulled away. Now you really must go, she said, her voice rough with emotion I'd never heard from her before. Or that will become a goodbye I'm not prepared to make. With one last look at her, memorizing the way the patterns beneath her skin pulsed with life and determination, I turned and ran for the escape pod. Deck 3, Section 8 was near the aft of the ship, a part I hadn't thoroughly explored. I found the pod easily enough, a sleek, egg-shaped craft, barely large enough for one person. As Zyra had promised, it was already programmed with coordinates for the Coalition outpost. As I prepared to board, the ship lurched violently, nearly throwing me off my feet. The battle had begun. Through the ship's internal communication system, I could hear Zyra's voice calm, despite the chaos, issuing commands to automated systems. Evasive pattern Delta 6, charging main batteries, targeting Vessel 3. I hesitated, one foot in the escape pod, torn between my mission and the desperate need to return to the bridge to fight alongside her. Another impact rocked the ship harder this time. Warning lights flashed throughout the corridor. Hull breach on Deck 2, the ship's computerized voice announced. Emergency containment activated. I couldn't leave her. Not like this. I was about to turn back when Zyra's voice came directly through the comm panel next to the escape pod. Gabriel? Her voice was steady, but I could hear the strain beneath it. I know what you're thinking. Don't. Zyra, I can't just... Yes, you can, she interrupted. You must. What we carry is too important. A pause filled with the sound of distant explosions. I made my choice when I saved this data. You made yours when you stayed with me after the Zyra'Kahl attack. Now make one more. The right one. Another explosion closer this time. The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated momentarily. Boarding craft detected, the ship's computer announced dispassionately. Hostiles approaching airlock 2. Gabriel, Zyra's voice again softer now. Please. That single word, that plea, broke through my resistance. She was right. The data had to reach the Coalition. It was the only way to give meaning to everything the Legion sacrificed, Tarek's death, our desperate flight across the stars. I'm coming back for you, I said again, the words somewhere between a promise and a prayer. Wait for me. I will look for you among the stars, Gabriel Reyes, she replied, a formal call farewell, that she'd mentioned once during our quieter moments together. With a heart that felt like lead, I sealed myself into the escape pod and initiated the launch sequence. Through the small viewport, I watched as the airlock opened, exposing the pod into the vacuum of space. The last thing I saw before the pod ejected was a flash of weapons fire as our ship, Zyra'Kahl's ship, engaged the nearest Imperium vessel, head-on, drawing their attention away from my escape. The pod shot away from the battle, its stealth systems activating immediately. On the small tactical display, I watched as the 5 Imperium ships in Nexor's vessel converged on Zyra'Kahl weapons blazing. Then suddenly a blinding flash of light filled the viewport, an explosion so massive it temporarily overloaded the pod's sensors. "No," I whispered, staring in horror as the sensors gradually came back online, revealing a debris field where the ships had been. No. She had detonated the ship's power core. A last desperate act to ensure no one, not Nexor, not the Imperium, got their hands on the data. To ensure I got away cleanly. The shock of it held me paralyzed as the pod accelerated to its maximum sublight speed, carrying me away from the expanding cloud of superheated gas and shattered metal that had been 6 ships in one extraordinary woman. I don't know how long I sat there staring at the emptiness of space through that tiny viewport. Minutes, hours, time seemed to lose all meaning. The pod systems operated automatically, guiding me toward the Coalition outpost as programmed. Eventually, I forced myself to focus to remember the mission. The data crystal weighed heavy in my palm as I examined it, this small device that had cost so many lives. That's when I noticed something odd. The patterns etched into its surface, similar to the luminescent markings on Kahl's skin, were changing, pulsing in a rhythm that seemed strangely familiar. Like Zyra'Kahl's patterns, when she was thinking deeply, planning our next move. I stared at it, wondering if grief was making me imagine things. But no, the patterns were definitely shifting, responding somehow to my touch. With trembling fingers, I connected the crystal to the pod's computer system. The small screen lit up immediately, displaying Kahl's script that gradually translated itself into standard galactic emergency protocol call activated. Consciousness transfer initiated. Partial upload complete, 73.8%. Host compatibility unknown. Proceed. My breath caught in my throat. Consciousness transfer. It couldn't be. And yet the Kahl were known for their advanced biotechnology. And Zyra'Kahl had given me this crystal, directly had pressed it into my hand with a peculiar intensity. Had she known this might happen? Had she planned for it? Without hesitation, I selected Y. The screen flashed and new text appeared. Neural interface required for complete integration. Proceed with partial communication. Again, I selected Y. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the crystal warmed in my hand, those patterns pulsing more rapidly, more vibrantly. And then impossibly, I heard her voice, not through the pod's speakers, but somehow directly in my mind. Gabriel. It was faint, fragmented, like a transmission breaking up across vast distances, but unmistakably Zyra'Kahl. Zyra'Kahl, I whispered, half convinced I was hallucinating. "How be emergency protocol?" Her voice came again, broken but present. Legion technology, consciousness imprint, partial transfer, before detonation. I stared at the crystal in wonder and terror. "You're in there, actually, you..." "Not complete," she responded, her mental voice growing slightly stronger. "Fragmented, core personality, memories, essence." Hope, wild and desperate, surged through me. "Can you be restored? Put into a new body?" A pause, longer this time. "Unknown. Coalition. Might have technology. Not priority now." She was right, of course. Even now, with her consciousness somehow preserved in this crystal, the mission remained the same. The data had to reach the Coalition. "Did it work?" I asked. "Did you destroy Nexor?" Another pause. "Uncertain. Explosion. Massive. Unlikely anything survived. But he wasn't entirely Kahl anymore," I finished for her. "He'd been changed by Project Ascension." "Yes, caution, advisable." The pod's navigation system chimed softly, indicating we were approaching a hyperspace entry point. Soon we would make the jump that would carry us to the Coalition outpost. "Rest now, babash," I told her, cradling the crystal carefully. Save your strength. We have a long journey ahead. Gabriel, her voice came once more clearer for a moment. If restoration proves impossible, if this partial existence is all that remains, you must continue without me. The thought was like a physical pain. Let's cross that bridge when we come to it. Promise me, she insisted. The mission first, always. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her sacrifice, a sacrifice that wasn't quite complete, but might yet prove to be. I promise, I finally said. But I also promise to try everything possible to restore you. Both can be true. The crystal warmed slightly against my palm, as if in acknowledgement. As the pod prepared for hyperspace, I secured the crystal in a protective case, making sure it was safely stored for the journey ahead. Whatever Zyra now was, a ghost in the machine, a partial consciousness, a technological miracle, I would protect her with my life. The mission came first, yes, but I had lost her once. I wouldn't lose her again. The stalks stretched into streaks of light as the pod, interim, hyperspace carrying us toward the Coalition outpost and whatever future awaited us there. A future where if I had anything to say about it, Zyra would exist as more than just a voice in a crystal. A future where the truth about Project Ascension would be revealed to the galaxy. A future where perhaps a human and a call might find a way to be together despite the odds stacked against them. As I drifted into an exhausted sleep, the crystal secured against my chest, I thought I heard her voice once more, faint but determined. We're not running anymore. This time we're bringing the fire to them. I smiled as consciousness faded. Even reduced to a partial existence in a data crystal, Zyra remained a warrior, a force to be reckoned with. And so was I. Together we would change the galaxy or die trying. But that, my friends, is a story for another day. For now, know this. Sometimes the greatest adventures, the most profound connections come when you least expect them. I went looking for a ship and found a partner, a mission, a purpose. And perhaps if the fates are kind, a love that transcends species, transcends physical form, transcends even death itself. So the next time you're at a shady auction on a backwater space station, consider your bids carefully. You never know what or who might come with your purchase. I'm Gabriel Reyes, former salvage rat, current fugitive, and perhaps the galaxy's most unlikely revolutionary. And somewhere in this crystal, I carry Zyra'Kahl of the Black Star Legion lives on. Together, we're coming for the Imperium. They should be afraid, very afraid. If you enjoyed this story of an unexpected connection across the stars, don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of adventure, romance, and survival against impossible odds. Share in the comments what you think happened to Nexor. Did he really perish in that explosion? Or is there more to his story? And would you have made the same choice as Gabriel? Or would you have stayed to fight alongside Zyra? Your support helps this channel continue bringing you new stories every week. Until next time, keep looking to the stars. You never know what might be looking back.